Sup, y'all, and welcome to the Jack Vita Show. I'm Jack Vita, alongside Jordan Morandini. How you doing, Jordan?
The boys are back again, Jack.
Yeah.
It feels like we recorded the first two like almost back-to-back days, and now it's been like 3 or 4 days. It feels like we haven't podcasted in forever.
I know, right?
Feels good to be back, though, no doubt about it.
Yeah, it's a Monday following the weekend. I went to the White Sox game yesterday. Did you have a good weekend?
I did, yeah. Another good weekend.
Yeah, it was a fun weekend.
Not necessarily a fun one for me watching my Phillies play the Marlins. But yeah, it was. The weather was nice, so I guess that's a plus.
Yes, so we'll definitely have to talk a little bit some baseball once we bring our guest in a second. Jordan, why don't you tell us what we got today? What are we going to be talking about? This is episode 3, Jack and Jordan's NFL preview. We got 2 divisions. What are we doing today?
Well, Jack, this is the one specific division that I enjoy talking about the most, the AFC South. It's got my Jags in it, so we'll discuss that, I believe, first. We're starting AFC, and then we'll rotate on to the good old NFC South, which seems like year in, year out, it's always a very competitive division with, teams that normally compete at the highest level when it comes to playoff time. So good set of divisions today, Jack, and our third out of our fourth here episode of the NFL preseason.
Yeah, so that should be a lot of fun. And who do we have joining us today? Would you like to introduce the guest for everyone, Jordan?
Well, I had a really good one with Chase, so I got to follow that up, the introduction. Let's see. Former cross-country superstar, a Call of Duty Hall of Famer, and good old Tennessee Titans fan, Conner Ennis.
Hey, what's up, guys? Thanks for having me on. Of the things that you mentioned, I really appreciate the Call of Duty Hall of Famer. I take that to heart, so thank you. I'm really excited to be here, though. These are 2 of my favorite divisions in football, so I'm ready to talk some football now that it's been so long. Get back into the fantasy football action and all that good stuff.
Yes, so we got plenty to talk about today, but Connor, we're going to have to ask for your permission here as the guest. Are you cool with talking a little baseball before we get going here?
I am good with talking baseball, but I'm also a Phillies fan, and it just hasn't been going very well for me and Jordan lately. This season's been pretty disappointing as it's gone on.
Well, Jack's trying to torture us here, Con,
I know he is.
Is what is going on here at the beginning of this podcast. I'm not sure I approve.
Well, guys, here's the deal. If you're a Cubs or a Phillies fan, this is not a good time of year, especially what happened over the weekend. Phillies, they lost 2 of 3 to the Marlins, correct? 2 of 3?
They did. And by the way, Jack, thanks to your Cubbies for helping us out in terms of trying to catch one of these teams.
Some very poor play from the Chicago Cubs, who have been an excellent home team all season long, got swept at home against the Washington Nationals. But not a good time if you're a Cubs or Phillies fan, but if you're a fan of the game of baseball, we have a really fun race coming down the stretch here.
Yeah, no doubt about it, Jack. I think in terms of on the NL side, for a while there, it looked like there were going to be a ton of teams right in this wild card race, and then the NL Central was going to be kind of a divisional race down the stretch too. And I think really that's been kind of the same case apart from the Nationals. They've started to really get on a run. I think they're 15-4 or so in their last 19, and they're up now 4 games ahead of every other team in terms of the wild card there. And then on the AL side, it's a very interesting situation, I think, because heading into this year, you had a lot of people obviously picking Boston to not only win the AL East, but then you have Tampa, who is really impressed on the AL side. Cleveland, it was supposed to win the Central, and Minnesota has really impressed in that division. They're up 3.5 games on Cleveland. So there's a lot of things to look out for kind of as this season kind of dwindles down.
Yes, and the big thing on the NL side, it seems like we're at this point where every series is just really big. These are big games you need to win. And the Cubs and Mets, and by the way, I need to eat my words on the Mets. I was very low and down on them coming into the season, and for the first half of the season, I looked like I was perhaps correct on that team, but they've really proven me wrong. They got swept by the Braves over the weekend. Cubs got swept by the Nationals, and now they're meeting in New York this week. Cubs have to face Stroman, Syndergaard, and DeGrom. That's a really tough 3 games.
As fun as it gets right there.
Yeah, for a team that has been played very poorly on the road all season. Both these teams really need this after being swept, and this could be a big series that really has a lot of playoff implications and who potentially gets into that wild card game.
Looking at the NL, I know a lot of people pretty much think that the Dodgers are probably going to walk to the World Series, but if I'm the Dodgers, I definitely don't want to play the Nationals coming out of the wild card. I think that's a tough matchup for them, especially they've got pitching to match up, and now their bats are all clicking. That's going to be a hard team to beat.
Well, and along with that, I think a great note here is that, as good as Washington has been since whatever it was, they've been on a great run since, honestly, June 1st. They have gained a total of 1 or 2 games on Atlanta throughout that stretch. So quietly, the Nationals have been talked about a lot lately, but quietly the Braves have just been playing fantastic baseball all season long. They're 20.
They've won 7 or 8 in a row.
It's ridiculous. They're 28 games over. And honestly, I think the one worry with them seems to be their staff. But they've had a lot of guys and they've had some injuries on that staff too, but a lot of guys throughout the year who have put together great years for them. And along with that, you have the big rise, and I don't even know if we can call it a rise because it was so obvious, but Ronald Acuna, he's turning into almost an MVP candidate. Saw an article today that he could potentially be the Mike Trout of the NL. So that's as high a praise as you can possibly get in the game. He's gotten that. And really, they lost Markakis for a while there. They've lost Swanson for a while throughout the season. They've had some key injuries here, but this team just continues to win night in, night out, Jack.
Yeah, Ender Inciarte as well. They've had a lot of injuries.
Yeah, somehow, some way, this team has battled and maintained from what has really been just a ridiculous push by the Nationals.
Yeah, and one more note, baseball-wise, and then we'll get to the original programming here. The Cardinals and Brewers are meeting in Milwaukee this week. First game tonight of a 3-game tilt. And the Cardinals are up 8-0, I believe, right now. The Cardinals are playing some excellent baseball. It seemed about 2-3 weeks ago, over the last 2-3 weeks, I think they've gained about 6 or 7 games on the Cubs, where they were, I think, at one point 4 games out. And if they win tonight, they're going to have a 3-game lead. This is a big series for all 3 teams in the National League Central that are really competing. This could be the final death blow to the Brewers, or it could really open things up and make it a 3-team race.
And with that, too, the Phils are hosting the Pirates for a 3-game set, Jack, too. So if somehow, some way the Mets are able to sweep the Cubs or something, we could see the Phillies jump into that wild card spot. Granted, they have not done a good job taking care of bad baseball teams this year. So I'm not sold they'll actually gain any games.
Anything else on this, Connor? You want to jump in there?
I said something about the NL, so I guess on the AL side, the only thing I would say is that to me it looks a lot like the Yankees have the bats, but the Astros have now the bats and the pitching. I think if those 2 teams faced off, it would be really entertaining because I think the Yankees do have the better bats, but I'm not sure that they could. I don't know if they could keep up with the pitching that the Astros team has now.
Yes, and also we had the Yankees and Dodgers meet this weekend. What a great interleague series in late August. Couldn't ask for anything better than that.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's go back to the original programming here. Let's talk about the AFC South. And we had a big Twitter explosion. I believe that was Saturday night. And the shocking news heard around the world. Connor, tell us about what we heard about Saturday night that just stunned us all.
Well, out of nowhere, as everybody knows, Andrew Luck has decided to retire, which, as a Titans fan and for Jordan as a Jags fan, I'm sure we can both say that this is actually not good news for us. It is in terms of our teams doing better, but the AFC South is a lot more fun with Andrew Luck, and the NFL in general. We're going to be missing out on a really great talent, a really good human being too. So it's bad news, but I wish the best for him and his family. I hope that he can come to peace with everything, and maybe this won't be it. I could see him coming back because he's only 29 years old, and we've seen QB in the past that have come back after retirement and played more.
Yeah, Con, I'm right there with you in terms of what you were talking about there. Look, it is. I mean, I follow a lot of Jaguar fans on Twitter. They're celebrating right now, and just so happy that this potentially opens up the division. But I feel exactly the way Con does. Look, when you're a fan of a team, you want to beat the best potential team. It always sucks when you beat a team that's either beaten down by injuries, or something wild like this happens. I was really looking forward to this division with Luck at the helm here. I think overall, heading into the year, a lot of people had the Colts as the divisional favorite. Following a year ago where they found themselves all the way back, I think they started 0-5 and then ended up 10-6, snuck into the playoffs. And I think heading into this year, a lot of people thought that this was the team to beat in the AFC South. But I got to be honest with you, Jack. Heading into this, I was really curious about his injury that was going on. It was a combination of, at first it was an ankle, then it was a calf, then it was back to the ankle. I wasn't sure if he was going to be ready for week one. It felt like almost the same thing with the shoulder 2 years ago, where it was kind of like, oh, he'll be back. And then he hadn't practiced yet, and he still hadn't practiced heading into the third week of the preseason now. It's just a guy that was mentally worn down by the injuries over the years. That was a really bad Colts line from about 2013 to 2016. They finally turned it around. And if I'm a Colts fan, I'm sick to my stomach because you feel like, wow, we finally put the team together. It's a great line. We have a really, really good GM who knows what he's doing. And you lose a guy, your franchise quarterback, right when you're kind of in your contending years from 2019 to 2021, in terms of their current roster assembled. It's a gut punch, and I definitely do feel for Colts fans, and I feel for Andrew Luck too. I hope all is well there, and congratulations on retirement. He's made his 50 to 100 mil. And he's 29, and hopefully he can have a healthy retirement.
And I believe he has a biology degree from Stanford.
He does, yeah. He graduated. So that probably could come into play if he ever needs money or anything along those lines in the future. But yeah, definitely a sad day for the NFL, Jack.
Yeah, it's really, really sad news, but I hate the fact that he's coming under fire by some people here for his decision. First of all, I can tell you right here as someone who's suffered from an autoimmune disease in the past, and now I'm healthy, you got to take care of your physical and mental health above your job and everything. And if that lets a fan base down sometimes, that's okay. You got to feel okay. That's so important. I'm glad that he's not going to push himself through this and have to, because sometimes we do this whole thing where it's like, you're awarded points for playing through an injury, and sometimes that's just not smart. Like, that's not what you should be doing. Kevin Durant should not have been on the court. And I respect the heck out of him for getting out there and everything, but I'm just so glad that he's doing what is best for him and not just pushing through something because it's what everyone is telling him to do.
Right, and for people, nobody can really question his toughness either. He played with a lacerated kidney. Yeah. He played through a bum shoulder and stuff. To say that he's just walking away and letting them down and everything. He's an entertainer, and at the end of the day, he doesn't really owe anybody anything. To make your Sunday better, it's not worth his mental health and the pain that potentially comes to his family with all that and everything. So, I'm not mad at him at all. I think that people should let it go and let him be at peace with it.
So the Colts are in a very precarious situation now. They are left with Jacoby Brissett as their starting quarterback this year, which, again, you mentioned, Jordan, this was a team with a lot of hype on them. I personally was not as high on the Colts coming into the season as a lot of people were, mainly just because the thing that's so weird about Indy, it seems like whenever they have high expectations, they fail to meet them. But when those expectations aren't there and they have lower expectations, they greatly exceed them. I was a little concerned about Luck's health, as you mentioned, because 2 years ago we had this whole thing, and I'm like, he might not even play this year, and that's what ended up happening. So whenever you have a quarterback with questionable health and a very dang important quarterback as well, as Andrew Luck is, there's a lot of just questions there. So I was not quite as high on the Colts as a lot of people were. Now, if you were, I totally understand it. I get it. And they had a great year last year, and I understand the hype. Now it seems like they're rebuilding, yes. I mean, Jacoby Brissett, in my opinion, I think he's one of the better backups in the league, and I think it's going to be a little fun to see what he could potentially do with a really good offensive line protecting him, because he started for them a couple years ago. Line was really bad then. What do you think, Connor?
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. And, when this news came out, the first thing that I thought about was that I thought the Colts were probably going to be like a 3 or 4 win team, but it's not like the rest of this roster isn't really good still. They have weapons on offense with like Ebron and Ty, and Marlon Mack was streaky good last year, and they have a really good defense with a really good line. And honestly, Jacoby Brissett has been pretty fortunate he sat behind Tom Brady and Andrew Luck, and those are two pretty good quarterbacks to sit behind. And when he did get the chance to play, he wasn't great, but it was really his first time playing. I mean, he played 2 games or whatever with the Patriots, but he threw for 3,100 yards, 13 touchdowns, and only 7 interceptions. So it's not like he's terrible. And I think this team is much better than they were when he last played for them. So, I don't see them as a 3 or 4 win team. I actually think that like 6 or 7 games is not out of question for them at all.
I think you made a great point there about Brissett and the action that he did get. That just wasn't a good Colts team that he came in and played for. And he played pretty well in that scenario. He took 52 sacks in those games. That was a bad offensive line, and it's the offensive line that really cost Luck all those early injuries in his career. I'm with you guys. Jack, you mentioned that you think they're potentially rebuilding now. I think they were literally at the end of their rebuild because they had perfect amount of cap space this offseason to make a couple big moves. They brought in Justin Houston, who is a big-time pass rushing threat on the edge. And you have your franchise quarterback. You had your franchise quarterback. And it just felt like, this was the time that this rebuild was over, and now this is the Colts' run. They were expected to make their run. I'm with you as well, Con. I think there's a lot still to like here. I mean, this was my division winner pick before the Luck news. And with Brissett, I think that sends them down a clear couple steps. I like them right around 7 to 8 wins as well. Honestly, initially when this happened, I was like, this is probably the worst team in the division. I think if Brissett can play average QB play this year, I think this can be right around an 8-win team and potentially be the 3rd best team in this division as we get to talk about the others. But there's a lot of pieces to like. Love their offensive line. And I think it'll do a much better job protecting Brissett. And he's got some weapons, so I do think the offense will be pretty good still. I still have a little bit of questions on the defense. It was a solid defense, pretty good defense a year ago. They have an absolute stud young linebacker in Darius Leonard. And I think the Justin Houston addition adds on some there. But I think it's a good team. I think it's still a great roster. And I think if Brissett can play, decent to well, I think they can be decent.
My forecast for Indy, basically my outlook for them, I think I shouldn't say they're rebuilding. I think they're going to go into this year. They're going to be like, let's see what we got in Jacoby Brissett. Let's see how good this team is with him. He's 26. Maybe there's something there with this guy. Let's check it out. And if there isn't, let's say they're a 6-10 team, then I think you could look at a team that is prime tanking for Trevor next year.
Yeah, I agree.
The question is, where do you go to tank for Trevor? Because the roster isn't set for a tank.
Yeah.
So that would be a very tough scenario where you either bring in a quarterback that isn't good at all to just play next season out, or you have to make some serious roster moves, whether it's stacking up on some first-round picks, making a couple deals. I think they're in a tough spot because I don't know if this team's going to be bad enough to try and tank for a guy like Tua or Trevor if it comes down to that.
Yeah, the other thing, too, is that they're really young. I think they were, like second or third in, cumulative age last year for their team. So rebuild. I don't know. I think they're just going to keep building from here, test out Brissett. Maybe go after a free agent next year or draft a new quarterback. We've seen young teams with young quarterbacks that are on that low salary. They're not paying a quarterback a lot. We've seen them have really good success. Teams like last year, Trubisky, Lamar Jackson, all these teams that they can bring young guys in and still win games. So I don't know. You never know with them. And I think, I agree with you guys. I think that 7 to 8 win range is definitely doable.
So I have their former over-under. It has not been updated on oddshark.com, and they were at 9.5. Pretty safe to say under, I think, for all of us.
Yeah, I think they're 7.5 now.
Yeah. I would go under 7.5.
Yeah, I think given the division, I think the other 3 teams are good football teams. I said 7 to 8. I like 6 to 7.
Yeah, me too. I'm with that 7.5 number. I think 7 was the number I was going for, so I would go with the under on them.
Yeah, I think they're right where you guys have them. 6 or 7 wins. I'm excited to kind of see the GM inside of me, which is not what I'm trying to do or anything, but it's fun. We've all done those Madden franchises and everything. I'd like to watch a front office that's done an excellent job. They have a great GM. See how they adapt to this. I like the challenge that they're going to have to navigate through here. Unfortunately, it comes under very, very unfortunate circumstances, but I think this is interesting. It's going to be fun to look at.
Yeah, and I think in terms of front offices, this has been a top 3 to 5 front office the past couple of years. They had 2 All-Pro rookies a year ago, and Darius Leonard and Quentin Nelson. So I think that GM and that front office knows what they're doing. So I'm with you, Jack. Going to be really interesting, not only this season but the next couple.
Do either of you guys have ideas if you were getting creative here, if there was a backup quarterback maybe to trade for from a good team, maybe like a Ryan Tannehill or someone like that to bring in?
Yeah, that was something I proposed. I was thinking about it, and if they don't think Jacoby Brissett is their guy, which it from what I'm reading on Twitter, it seems like they think that he has all the attributes to be their starting quarterback. But the Titans have Tannehill as a backup, who has won games with the Dolphins. And then, as Jordan said, too, with Bortles out in L.A.
He makes his way in again. That's 3 straight podcasts, Jack.
Yeah, so, I mean, I don't know. It's tough to say. I think they're going to stick with him, but it would be interesting, especially, as if you're like the owner or GM of the Titans and they want to come in and offer you something, decent for Ryan Tannehill, it'd be tempting to take that offer.
I don't think Tannehill would be an option, just because I don't think the Titans would want to try and help the Colts in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, that is true.
Unless the offer was very appetizing. I have a couple names, Jack. I think, and you touched on Bortles, I think he could be a potential fit. He's a guy who's won playoff games, and if he's behind a good line, I think he can be a decent quarterback. Nothing special. I like a couple young guys, too. Jack, you know all about Mason Rudolph. I don't know if the Steelers think he's the future behind Ben Roethlisberger, but if they don't, I think that could be a potential young name that they could go after. And Josh Rosen, if somehow, some way doesn't end up starting for Miami, they tank for Tua, they get Tua next year or something, that could be another team that could potentially take a chance on Josh Rosen.
Oh my goodness. Well, the Steelers have an interesting backup battle going on right now, and Rudolph has been fantastic this preseason.
Yeah.
So it depends on the offer. He was a third-round pick, so they'd have to give up more than a third-round pick would be my guess in order for the Steelers to pull the trigger. But Dobbs is also a viable option as a backup, so that he is expendable if there's the right offer. I'm going to make one comparison to this situation. It reminds me of something that happened a few years ago. Reminds me of when Teddy Bridgewater tore his ACL at practice, and the Vikings were just like, oh my goodness, we have a really good team here. If we can get an adequate quarterback, we can be a playoff team. And that didn't end up happening that year. It ended up happening the next year. But they made that deal for Sam Bradford where they dealt a first-round pick for him in camp. It doesn't sound like, based on what you guys have been hearing on Twitter and whatnot, that that's what's going to happen. But that would be really interesting to see.
I think
definitely.
I think this front office is too smart to give up a first rounder for somebody like Sam Bradford.
Oh, boy.
I think they're going to take their chances with a guy like Jacoby Brissett.
Maybe Case Keenum, though.
He's starting, by the way. I heard he's opening up the starter over there.
Yeah.
So maybe if what's his name takes over, ends up taking over.
Hoskins,
yeah. Hoskins. Sorry, that could be or Haskins. Haskins, not Reese. Could be a potential fit.
I'm going to say, Jordan, is about Bortles. You mentioned he 3 in a row. We're going out to his division next tomorrow when we do the
Really
West.
I will no doubt sneak him in that one. So prepare yourself.
All right, let's move on. Conner, as a big Titans fan, give us what you're looking at with the Titans this year. I'm going to turn it over to you. Go in any direction you want. It's all yours, buddy.
All right, thank you. So, as a Titans fan, you look at the last 3 years, back-to-back-to-back 9-7 seasons. As a fan, you really hope that they can take a step forward this year and get to 10-6. I think they have a much better team this year, and I really like a lot of the stuff that they did in the offseason. Sorry, I know you hate when people say we. The biggest question, obviously, is Marcus Mariota. He has not been able to stay healthy at all. I think he had like 10 different injuries that he was dealing with last year. And what's weird about him is that he seems to play well against teams that are actually good, like winning record teams. He has a winning record against winning teams, but that obviously means that he's not playing very well against the bad teams. So that's kind of concerning. Another thing about Marcus, though, is that he did put on 20 to 25 pounds in the offseason. I'm not sure if a lot of people know about that, but I think that that's going to help him a lot with taking hits and staying healthy. That's what I'm hoping for, at least. Looking at the schedule, I know that we play a couple of our harder games at home, and last year we were a very, very good home team. We have been for the past 3 years, so that is a positive thing to look at. The additions to the team, Roger Saffold, he was with the Rams last year. He's arguably like a top 3 to 5 left guard in the league. He's going to be lining up next to Taylor Lewan, who is suspended for the first 4 games, so that hurts. But Lewan's been a top 3 to 5 left tackle in the game as well. So, I mean, just looking at that, that's a really, really good left side of the line for Derrick Henry to run behind. We added Adam Humphries, who was surprisingly good with the Bucs last year. I think he's going to be a guy who you can rely on to make catches. We need him. Marcus has thrown to him a lot in the preseason, and seems like they have a good connection there. We drafted A.J. Brown. They drafted A.J. Brown, so that should help the offense. Cameron Wake came from the Dolphins. He's older, but he was still very effective last year at like 35 or 36 years old. So I don't expect him to be great or anything, but I do expect him to help with some of our young pass rushers, like Harold Landry is a guy that I know the Titans organization is really big on him as a defensive end, getting after the quarterback. And finally, Delaney Walker is back, who is Marcus' favorite target, has been since he's been there. So there's a lot of really positive things to look at going into this year, but I think the main thing is just, can Marcus stay healthy? And can we beat teams like the Bills last year, who they just flopped against, like the Dolphins last year, who they just flopped against? So overall, I mean, I'm looking at another winning season. I'm really hoping for 10-6 going through the schedule. Unfortunately, I think 9-7 is kind of the place where they finish. But it should be a really competitive division, and 1 or 2 games here and there could make a huge difference.
Con, you touched on, and Jack, let me be clear. I don't think Marcus Mariota is a good quarterback.
Whoa.
We've had this discussion so many times. I don't. But the unbiased self in me, Jaguar fan in me, I had to do some digging. I had to figure out why Marcus Mariota has not been good the past 2 seasons. And one little number that I found seems to be the key. So here we go, boys. Con, you may enjoy this. This is a Titans team that the past 3 seasons has went 9-7. Con touched on that. And it's a Titans offensive line that has been known to really be the heart of this roster. They spent the big money on Lewan. Con touched on a couple of the other guys. I do think the Roger Saffold addition is a great addition. But it's been known, it's known as one of the top lines in the game. It's been known as one of the top lines in the game for the past couple of years. In Marcus's sophomore season, they allowed 27 sacks, which was good for 25th in the NFL. So they were 5th or 6th least amount of sacks given up in the NFL. Sophomore season for Mariota was his best season by far. 3.4K yards, 26 TDs, 9 interceptions. Then you move to the 2017 season where the downfall of Mariota has kind of been the past 2 years. And that line wasn't necessarily as good. They moved up to 15th in sacks given up. And then you move to a year ago, and he took the 10th most sacks. So this is a line that is supposed to be kind of their bread and butter. And whether it's a combination of Mariota not getting rid of the ball as fast or this team's line underperforming, it did show when Mariota's not getting sacked consistently, he can be a good quarterback. But the past 2 seasons, he's thrown for 13 TDs, 15 picks, and then a year ago, 11 TDs, 8 picks. So to me, that screams that if this line can turn it around, and I think the Roger Saffold, like I touched on, is a huge addition. Now losing Lewan for the first 4 games, including having to go against the Browns pass rush and the Jags pass rush is not ideal. I think that's one of the most eye-opening stats. I was trying to figure out, what has definitely necessarily been the change. Maybe it's not Mariota. What around Mariota has changed a little bit the past 2 seasons to when he had big success his sophomore year. And that, to me, jumped out. Now, let me touch on the Titans as a whole. I think in terms of the AFC South, I think it's up and down probably one of, if not the best rosters in this division. I love what they have in the backfield. I think the backfield combination in terms of Henry complemented with Dion Lewis is really, really good. Con touched on a couple of their additions. Love the Adam Humphries addition. Always such an advantage having a good slot guy. Jack, we touched on it a little bit with the Bills with Josh Allen getting his slot guy. I think Adam Humphries can kind of be the same thing here. And they've had a couple kind of mediocre receivers over the years, and guys like Tawan Taylor and Tajay Sharp. I like A.J. Brown to kind of come in and fill one of those spots. And then Corey Davis, to me, is a potential breakout this year. I think with other guys around him the way he will have this year, Delaney Walker back, I like Corey Davis as a breakout guy. And then on the defensive side of the ball, I mean, it's pretty much the same defense as we've seen the past couple of years. It's been really a good defense. It's been the bread and butter to their 9-7 seasons, just running the football, and it is a combination of running the football and playing good defense. And they locked up their guy, Kevin Byard, one of the best safeties in the game on Turner this offseason, and like Con touched on, added Cameron Wake. So really, I think there's a lot to like. Actually, as much as it hurts me to say, I think the Titans are the team to beat in the division now.
Whoa.
I do. With the injury, or I guess retirement of Andrew Luck. But I will say, my biggest question, it has to be Marcus Mariota. If he can't take a step forward, I mean, this is a team that is going to be in a really tough spot because this is pretty much the make or break year for Mariota. Con, he's a free agent after this year, I believe, right?
Yes, he is.
Yep. So it's a make or break. I think if he has another pretty mediocre season and they finish 9-7 or something and miss the playoffs and make the wild card and then lose, I think they're going to have a big decision to make in terms of, 1, do we bring back Mariota? And 2, can we really afford to pay him, the bigger QB money?
Yeah, I agree.
Not to mention, maybe they figured out that they can play Derrick Henry every game this year.
Correct. That was one thing I also wrote down, is that they're going to get hopefully a full season's workload out of Derrick Henry and not just 6 weeks. So, I mean, I don't know. We had Matt LaFleur last year. It took him 10 weeks to figure out to give the ball to Derrick Henry.
And he got a head coaching job as a result.
He did.
Yeah, I don't know. Good for him. I'm really happy for him. He seems like a really great guy, but it was kind of mind-blowing to me that it took him that long to put in the 6'3", 250-pound running back that just runs over linebackers. So I don't know.
Is Derrick Henry actually worth drafting this year in fantasy? Because I've drafted him each of the last 2 years, expecting that breakout. And I ended up dropping him like around week 9, and then I see him like lighting me up playoffs for another team.
Yeah, to me, he's a guy that if you're playing a PPR league, I would stay away from, and I think he's a really, really good running back 2 option in a standard league.
Yeah, round 3 or 4, Jack. Round 3 or 4 for Derrick Henry.
Well, we'll be doing an auction draft in our Podcasters Jack Vita Show League.
Oh, I forgot that was an auction. You are the one auction league I participate in. Should be fun.
Yeah, so I think it's a good team. I like them. I think they're going to be fun to watch for a lot of the reasons you guys mentioned. And here's where I am going into this. I know I'm going to pick 2 teams from this division to make the playoffs. 2 out of these 3, and I got to figure out, this is like The Bachelor, I got to figure out which girl isn't getting a rose. I like this team. I think between Titans, Jags, and Texans, 2 of them are going to be playoff teams, so I'm excited to see where we go as we break down those other teams. I'm going to have to make a decision. Their over-under total, boys, is 7.5. I think we all would go over, right?
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, this is a 9-7 team for 3 straight years, and I think their roster's better this year. So I think you smash that over.
Yeah, so it's they either take a jump or they're going to be the immortal, like, Chris Davis of NFL teams, 7 every year.
Oh, man.
It's 9-7, 247.
Dude, Chris Davis, it's this thing. Every year, I pulled it up. 2015, 16, 17, 18, all 4 of those years, he batted 247.
That's got to be, I know that stat. That's got to be one of the more wild stats ever in sports. You know how hard that is?
Yeah. Yeah, so it'd be the 9-7 as a team, which it seems like they're pretty safe 9-7 with a team that could potentially make a leap and be a playoff team or a division winner.
Yeah,
because they have made the playoffs the last couple of years.
Went into Kansas City and beat them. That was one of the highlights of the decade for me. That was awesome.
Do they have any other playoff wins this decade? That might be the highlight.
No, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I had to get my jab in.
Yeah, definitely. It's all right though. We've beat the Jags in 4 straight, so that's what I like. That's what I like.
I remember that one year that they cleaned their cleats with the terrible towel, and the Steelers won the Super Bowl that year.
Yeah, the good old Javon Curse and Keith Bullock days. Those were the days.
Oh man, that was great. Okay, Jordan, let's go over to your team. Let's
do it.
Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm excited about this team because it seems like they've lost a little bit of the hype on them. They were a fun bandwagon. I know you saw people hopping onto that bandwagon about a year and a half ago when they were going up against the teams that everyone disliked, the Steelers, the Patriots. Then going into last year, sky-high expectations, and they beat the Patriots. They played a great game against...
It was our Super Bowl, Jack. It truly was.
I remember I was podcasting with Rachel Gerhardt that day after that game, and she was so mad.
I mean, yeah, when Blake Bortles lights you up the way he did in that game, there's definitely reason to be angry.
Yeah, Bortles had a nice little first 4 weeks last year, and they also played a great game against the Steelers. So this team, it feels like, to a lot of people, it seems like it was so long ago that they were almost in the Super Bowl, that they were leading the Patriots at halftime in an AFC Championship game. They've upgraded the quarterback position. What's missing here? What am I missing? Why isn't this a team that's getting more hype?
Well, I think this team I need to make this clear. I think of the teams in this division, have the highest upside of any team in this division.
Yeah.
In terms of, you have a quarterback in Nick Foles now who has won it when it's mattered most. And I think this is the best defense in this division. A year ago, you could make the case that the defense took a clear step down, but I think a lot of that had to deal with the fact that the offense literally couldn't score a point. And that's just demoralizing to a defense, knowing that you have to hold a team to 3 to 7 points or you're going to lose the ball game. You touched on Jack. I think the Nick Foles edition, it was just one that had to be made. Blake Bortles wasn't coming back. Foles was pretty much the premier option in terms of free agent quarterbacks. They could have potentially, either moved up and tried to draft one or taken one in the draft. But I like the Nick Foles move just because I think this team kind of, with the way the roster is assembled, is in kind of a win-now mode. Their defense, a lot of their young guys are on rookie deals. They're about to get paid. So you'll see a little bit of a turnover after this year on this defense. What's missing? Why are they not getting that? I think a lot of it has to deal with the five. We'll need to see it more. I don't think people are really scared of this, to be quite honest with you. Nick Foles, he's done it for spurts, but he's never really done it, or at least has felt like he's done it for like a full season's worth. So that'll be something to look out for. And Leonard Fournette maybe is the key to this offense too. They're a team that wants to run the football and run it consistently. And with Bortles, yes, he was facing a lot of stacked boxes, but regardless, Fournette really, in terms of yard per carry, has not been a good running back the past couple of years. And along with that, he's been banged up a lot. And when you don't have your star running back in the backfield and you don't have a passing threat like they did a year ago, it's a very easy offense to stop. So that's probably the one thing to look out for. I think that's the most important thing for this Jaguars team this year is the health of Leonard Fournette. And can Nick Foles do it for a season? I think if both of those answers are yes, I think this is a team that really the sky is the limit, because I still think this defense is nasty. It's a lot of the same guys from 2017 when they made that run, and they've made a couple additions too. I love the pick in Josh Allen. He's a guy who kind of fell to them, a Kentucky edge rusher, but he's a guy to look out for. Preseason-wise, he has dominated, and they already have a really good edge rusher in Yannick Ngakoue. So pairing him with Josh Allen on third down sets when teams are going to be, it's going to be really, really fun to watch with those corners and Ramsey and Bouye in the backside. So I think they're a playoff team as well. I had the Titans kind of as the favorite to win the division. I think this is a playoff team as well. I think the Jags get in as a wild card this year. So I too, Jack, do think two teams come out of this division and make the postseason.
The one thing I was looking at, and to go back to your point, Jack, of why they're not getting hype, I actually do think they've gotten a good amount of hype this year. From being a 5-11 team and, not really adding anybody except Nick Foles and a couple draft picks. I mean, I've seen most of what I've seen has been like between 9 and 11 wins for the Jags. And to take that step forward with just pretty much replacing their quarterback and, not having like the greatest weapons on offense and questioning Fournette's health, I actually do think some of the hype's been there for the Jags. And I agree with a lot of what you guys are saying. Fournette needs to stay healthy. The defense should be really good. Foles is definitely an upgrade. I'm also very interested to see how he does in a full regular season and not just like a 3-game playoff run. The offensive line, though, that's the one thing I wanted to touch on, is that, last year they were missing 4 out of their 5 starters that got hurt. If they stay healthy all year and, maybe step up a little bit, take a step forward, that's a really big boost for any offense. So I could definitely see them being dangerous this year.
That's a good point, Con. And to note on the offensive line, they brought in a draft pick, Jawan Taylor from Florida. He's a guy who was projected in the first round. He fell because of a banged-up knee. They kind of, according to the analysts, I really don't know. I didn't watch it down. He played in college. It was considered a steal in terms of where he ended up getting drafted. And along with that, they paid Andrew Norwell, who was a stud Pro Bowl guard for the Panthers. They paid him last year. He was honestly a disappointment a year ago. So he'll be really important, too, in terms of he was one of the guys who ended up getting hurt. If he's back to form and at a Pro Bowl level, this offensive line can look a lot better than it was a year ago.
It'll be interesting to see Nick Foles once again in a different situation. Just want to see, is he like Matt Flynn? when he's just amazing with one team. He goes back to the Packers. He can win it. He can beat anyone. He can throw for 400 yards. What can he do with the weapons here in Jacksonville? Would you say they've upgraded at receiver this year? Because I know Bortles got a lot of crap over the last few years, but he did not have a whole lot that he was working with offensively.
Yeah, I mean, I've always said that. I don't think they really helped Blake out much at all. D.D. Westbrook, to me, it has the potential to be a stud receiver. He'll probably be the number one here and the potential breakout guy. Marquise Lee, who was one of Bortles' favorite targets here, he actually, I don't know if it was an ACL, he had a serious injury. He's expected to be back by week 2 or 3. And along with that, they brought in a Chris Conley, who was on the Chiefs. He was like the 3rd or 4th receiver, but he's a speed guy, so he'll be a guy to look out for as well. So I think in terms of receiver, Jack, they look better on paper than they did a year ago.
That could be key as well.
Yeah, I would agree.
All right, guys, looking at their over-under total for the season, they were at 7.5 5 days ago. I would think that's gone up. I would go over with them. What do you think, Connor?
Yeah, I'm going over as well. If they are at 7.5, I definitely think they're an 8 or 9 win team. Like I said, with all these teams, it's going to be a very tough division, and these teams are going to just have to try and split. Honestly, if you get swept by one of these division teams, it's probably going to be hard to hit that 9 or 10 win range.
And you touched on it. I think even with that, it's important for us to note. I think we all feel the same way about this. While we think this division is going to be really competitive, it doesn't feel like any of us think that any of these teams are really deep playoff to Super Bowl contenders. Do we? I mean, I think this could be a division where 2 teams make it into the playoffs, but I just don't see these teams as monster threats with where they're at.
Well, I think that's where the upside thing comes in with Jacksonville, because we've seen them go on a deep playoff run before, just 2 years ago. So I think that's where you could see a little bit of upside, where if they were to play an offensive juggernaut and shut them down to some degree, or at least limit them, whether it be Kansas City, Pittsburgh, or New England, you could look at, well, this team is really unique and they have the potential to do something special here.
While we say that none of these teams are Super Bowl contenders right now, I think if you look at the Jags and the Titans, it's going to be, can their offenses score points?
Yeah.
Because they have the defenses to win. If either of these offenses steps up and they play really well and maybe even just get hot at the end of the year, I definitely think these teams can compete with anybody, just because defense will keep them in every game.
And I think both offenses are really similar in the aspect of they want to be run first, they want to barrel over teams, wear teams down. And Jack, to be quite honest with you, I guess I mentioned that I didn't think they make deep runs, but good defense and running the football, that's what ended up working a lot of times in the playoffs. I know the league is changing a little bit, but some of these teams, I guess, could be built for a run. I just don't know if they're that good to be able to do that.
Yeah, the one thing I will say is, we haven't quite gotten to it in our preview show, but there's always 1 or 2 teams every year, whether it be the Rams or the Bears or just someone that just emerges and has an excellent regular season and looks like a potential contender. I don't know who that is quite yet. Maybe we'll get to someone in the next division. But if you're looking at a team to go from worst to first, I think this team has a lot of potential to do that.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that especially Luck retiring, I think helps that a lot. Helps that potential a lot.
Connor, is there, I'll give you a chance because you haven't gotten to be on any of these other episodes. Is there someone, whether it be outside or inside of this division, that you look at as a potential making that big jump from worst first? Capitalizing on a bad schedule?
I mean, do they have to finish worst? Do they have to finish last in their division last year?
No.
Okay, I mean,
losing
the
season.
team that I'm looking at the most is the Jets. They started to play really well on offense at the end of the year last year, and they added Le'Veon. Their defense is going to be really good, and Darnold was a big key to them playing well at the end of the year. I think in terms of yardage, he was putting up top 5 QB numbers over the last 4 weeks. So if he can continue that streak and they get Le'Veon the ball and still can play some good defense, I think that's a team that could. I mean, I don't know if they're going to beat the Patriots, but I see them taking a huge leap forward.
Yeah. I think here's a teaser for the next episode. I think the Raiders are going to be. I'm not
Jack,
saying
you're such
that.
a John Gruden.
Yes, you are.
Look. I'm not saying that I think they're going to do anything. I just think, my goodness, is this team entertaining to
Oh,
look
no
at.
doubt about it.
Okay, let's move over. Did you get your pick in there, Jordan? I can't remember.
Wild card for the Jags.
Okay, wild card. So you go over.
Yeah, I go over as well.
How many wins?
I like them 9-7 to 10-6.
Okay. Do you think 9-7 gets a wild card in the AFC?
I think it could, yes. I think a lot of these teams are going to beat up on each other this year. Apart from me, I mean, looking at the divisions real quick, I mean, apart from maybe the Chargers in terms of behind Kansas City, I don't know where I had Cleveland, but I think them and the Jags will be very similar in potential wild card slots.
Okay, guys, let's talk about the last team in this division. I can't believe we are talking about them last, but I guess it makes sense given all the news and everything. The Houston Texans. Connor, what's your read on the Texans going into the 2019 season?
Yeah, so originally when I thought about the Texans, I don't know if it's just because I think back to them playing against the Colts in the playoffs or whatever, but I tend to forget that they did win the division last year and that they were really hot, and they still have the best offense in this division right now. There's a few question marks going into this year. I know there's some rumors about Jadeveon Clowney. I don't know if they're true or not. They did franchise tag him, but I've seen reports that they're trying to move him within the next 2 weeks. That would be a really big loss to their defense. They did add Gibson to the defense, which means I know they're addressing some of the defensive issues they had with their backs. He's going to be 30 years old, so he's not the youngest defensive back, but that's a good pickup. The one thing that I did see is that they got Matt Khalil. And just I live in the Charlotte area, so I watch a lot of Panthers games, and he was really bad for them last year. So I don't know if he's going to be a starter for that offensive line, but if he does and he plays like he did last year, that's not good for them. They added Bradley Roby last year, another defensive back. I think if their defense can step up, and play at the level that their offense keeps them in the games, they're going to be hard to beat. And surprisingly, I was looking, the Texans were 8th in rushing last year. And I think Deshaun Watson was a big part of that, but they did lose Lamar Miller. And I think that's a pretty big loss for them. I'm not sure how that makes their running game look now.
I have no idea what this team is doing. I came into this with initially when we were prepping this, I thought this was the clear 4th best team in this division when Andrew Luck was ready to roll. And now that he's retired, that's kind of changed a little bit. I can see them ending up ahead of Indianapolis, but a lot of what their issues were a year ago, and don't get me wrong, they won 11 games, and I think a lot of that was behind how good Deshaun Watson is. He's a big-time quarterback, and I think that is very important to note that they have the best quarterback in this division, and that's a lot of times that's sometimes what you need to win a division. But I guess this offseason is what is confusing me. It just doesn't make too much sense to me. This was a brutal line. Watson got hit 55 plus sacks a year ago. And you mentioned they brought in Matt Khalil. Yeah, he's not starting on this line. Okay. And I just don't think they made any upgrades there. I think a lot of people expected them to try and draft. I don't even know if they drafted. It just makes no sense that they didn't try and repair this line in some way, shape, or form. And then on the other side of the ball, what are you doing? If you have to give Jadeveon Clowney the big contract, you give Jadeveon Clowney the big contract. Pairing him with J.J. Watt has caused issues when both are healthy for every single quarterback in this division for the past however many years when those two are on the field. It makes no sense to me that I'm seeing reports that they could potentially trade him. Absolutely none. You don't trade great pass rushers like that. You just pay them. I just don't understand it. Watson's on a rookie contract right now. I don't get where the money issue is with Clowney. I don't know. Maybe it's a character issue that they're worried about. I'm not sure. But it doesn't make sense to me. If they end up trading to Jadeveon Clowney, this is on paper, Jack, apart from Deshaun Watson and the best playmaker in the division, DeAndre Hopkins, not a very good roster. So it's just a very, very odd scenario, really odd offseason for me. I don't understand a lot of it. Yes, they won 11 games a year ago. I believe they lost the first playoff game they played. Apart from, unless Watson's phenomenal again, absolutely phenomenal behind another bad line, a quarterback who runs a lot, the injury potential is going to be there for a guy like Deshaun. I just don't like a lot of what they've done this offseason.
Honestly, guys, I do not know what this team is. It's really hard. You guys are also trying to crack the code on these guys. 11 wins a year ago. Really good team. The regular season had some big wins, and I think they win like 8 or 9 games in a row at some point.
Yeah, they won a bunch. They went on a really good streak there because they started off the season. I think they were like 0-3 or 1-4, and everybody thought they were out of the division.
Yeah, started out 0-3, won 9 in a row, got to 9-3, and then played 500 ball last 4 weeks of the season to get them to 11-5.
Jack, wait, I didn't touch on it during my hour-and-a-half rant there, but I also, this is a horrible schedule they have to play. Have you guys taken a look at their schedule?
Yeah, it's brutal. I know
the first 6 weeks, there is absolute. I mean, I think all 6 of these teams are potential teams that are 8-8 or better. They go to the Saints, host the Jags, to the Chargers, host the Panthers, host the Falcons, and at Kansas City. That is a brutal 6-game start. It's a really hard schedule throughout. They play the Pats later in the year, Titans twice in the last 3 weeks. That's another aspect. I'm just not big on the Texans. I don't love their roster, and now getting into their schedule. Don't love their schedule at all either.
Looking at their schedule, that was actually one of the things when I was putting together their record for this year, trying to predict it out. I see the Jags and the Titans, they play similar schedules, but they play a lot of their harder games at home. And the Texans play a lot of their harder games on the road, which is something I noticed. So that could, we know, I don't know if it's for every team, but you look at teams like, I know for the Titans, they play a lot better at home than they do on the road, and going into anywhere and winning on Sunday is not easy. So that could be a huge game changer for this Texans team.
Yeah, that schedule is really tough. Oh my goodness, I'm looking at it right now. Guys, another talking point. Are J.J. Watt's best days of football behind him? Because I watched that playoff game, and small sample size, but it just didn't seem like he doesn't seem like he's as dominant of a presence as he was about 3 or 4 years ago.
I think that's a fair take, Jack. I think a lot of it has to deal with the injuries he's had over the years too.
Yeah, exactly.
I think he had the 2 years back to back where he played very minimal games. Last year he was back to playing 16. But in terms of his sack numbers, I think it was only like his 4th highest sack season a year ago. And I'm with you. He didn't make hardly any impact in that playoff game. It's possible his best days are past him, but you know what you can do when your best pass rusher's on his last legs? You can pay the younger guy who can have that similar production. And it just confuses the heck out of me. I have no idea what the issue is there.
You know what's funny? We talk about that. He was still a first-team All-Pro last year.
He did have 16 sacks, so he had a good year.
Yeah, I guess what I was thinking back to was just the monster that guy was around 2014, 2015, where it was like, holy smokes. I mean, he was 3-time Defensive Player of the Year. He was unstoppable then.
Mm-hmm. I just think the pairing of him and Clowney can be so intimidating to teams. I think it's just one you need to keep together for as long as you potentially can.
How's the rest of the defense look?
Con touched on Tashawn Gibson. He's a former Jaguar. He was actually a part of that really, really good Jaguar defense in 2017, but he's getting up there in age. I don't think they had a very good secondary a year ago, and it doesn't look like they brought any free agents secondary-wise apart from Gibson. So not many notable names here, I don't think, Jack, apart from just the Clowney and Watt up front.
Yeah, they brought in Gibson, and then they also added Bradley Roby, who's solid. But I think when they went into this offseason, it was pretty clear that their defensive backs was where they were lacking. So I guess it's good that they at least addressed some depth there, maybe to help them, not getting burned. Yeah, the Texans they're kind of a just a I don't know. They're a weird team because they're a team that you look at and they can score with the best of them, but you look at their schedule and how tough the division should be this year, and I don't know. It's hard to figure out where they're gonna end up.
And one note we didn't make, but probably should on this podcast, is that Will Fuller should be back, and it seems like whenever Will Fuller's on the field, he's making a play. He's been really banged up throughout his first couple of years in the NFL, but I do think he's another monster play target and can potentially you have to pay attention to Will Fuller when he's on the field. So that could open up some things for DeAndre Hopkins, or if they double Hopkins, I think Fuller can be a big threat.
Is this the best quarterback in the division now, Deshaun Watson?
I would say yes, without a question.
Yeah, I definitely think he is. And in terms of fantasy, I'm looking at him as like a top 2 or 3 quarterback.
Yeah, he's been taken that way. People are really, really high on Deshaun heading into this year. And I think it's because they know he's going to have to put up a lot of points.
They have some of the highest of high-impact players. So how far can that get you? If Deshaun is protected well this year, continues to progress, he was a Pro Bowler last year now. This is a guy I was really, really high on going into the draft. When I saw what he did to Alabama in that national title game, I was like, this guy looks like he has the tools to be a superstar. And we've seen bits and pieces of it here and there, right? Maybe more than bits and pieces. We've seen a lot. So if he can take another step, who knows? I don't know what his ceiling is, but this is a guy that, I mean, when you have a quarterback like that, if you're able to protect him, take good care of him, now that may be a question mark. We'll see. You've got 2 excellent weapons in Hopkins and potentially Fuller if he stays healthy. And then those two guys on the end in Watt and Clowney, I still think this could be a really good football team just based on those high-impact players alone.
Yeah, you ask yourself, what do you want to be good at in the NFL? You want to be good at rushing the passer. You want to have a good quarterback. And I would say the other one, Jack, is probably you want to be able to protect your quarterback. And I think that, to me, is the big question for them.
Wow, this is interesting. All right, so their over-under is 8. Based on what you guys have said, I'm guessing you're both going under.
I can see them. I think right around 8, actually. I think this division as a whole is going to beat each other out. I think the Titans and Jags could very easily be 10-6 to 9-7. Them like 8-8, and the Colts maybe 6-10, something around that.
Yeah, and for me, I actually have them over. I think they're a 9-7 team. I think really all 3 of the top teams in this division could finish 9-7, and then it's just going to come down to whoever can get to that 10th win. But I mean, it's hard to tell. Like I said, if one of these 3 teams sweeps the other team, or 2 of the other teams, that's going to be a huge changer for the division.
So here's what I'm going to do here, boys. I think I'm going to go with the Jaguars as a division champ because I like the upside. I'm going upside there. Okay. So then for the wild card, because I said I'm giving out 2 roses. Titans or Texans, and they meet in week 17.
And week 15 as well, Jack. Important to note.
Yes, so that is crazy. Those last 3 weeks of the season, you get played 2 out of 3 times. That'll be fun to watch. I think it's going to go down to this last day of the season, December 29th in Houston. I think the winner of that game is going to make the playoffs. It's currently scheduled as a 12 o'clock game. I bet they move it to prime time. And didn't we get something like this last year? Weren't the Titans playing in a win-in-your-end game last year?
Yes, they were, with good old Blaine Gabbert at the helm. I actually went to that game, and I didn't find out until Sunday morning that Marcus wasn't playing. So that was it was a little shot to the gut. Originally, I was I was on the Blaine train. I thought that our team was good enough and that we were at home that we could pull that game out, but it just wasn't enough. Andrew Luck made us look bad, especially at the end of the game. Would have been interesting if Marcus played that game. I think we would have definitely had a much better chance. But this could be the same thing. That was originally supposed to be a noon game as well, and they pushed that to the Sunday night game. And it was a great environment. I'd love to see it again.
Yeah, well, that's a very interesting story. I didn't know the ins and outs of how your personal emotions and reactions to finding out that Mariota was not playing. That must have sucked.
Yeah, it was pretty shocking. I woke up and I was like, he's going to play. He's tough. He's not. This last game of the year, he's going to play. He's going to play. And then it came out that he wasn't going to play. And my brother's actually a huge Colts fan, so he was with us. And, of course, he was happy. But, man, I
wasn't so happy anymore.
Yeah, he's not so. That's terrible. He's really down right now about that, and I feel bad for him. But, man. I know the pain because now he has to go through this whole year of what I went through sitting at that game, watching Marcus stand on the sidelines, wondering what if.
Let me make it clear: it's never, Jack. It's never a good situation when you have to count on Blaine. Why do I have to bring this up with all my Jags quarterbacks? I did the same exact quote like the podcast ago.
Where's David Garrard when you need him? Where's Byron Leftwich?
No, exactly.
Byron Leftwich was an excellent Steelers backup. I liked him as a backup.
Yeah, he was a good backup. Take me back to the Brunel days.
Oh man, he was awesome. Okay, so going back, December 29th, week 17, prime time, Titans, Texans in Houston. I think Houston gets a huge lift from that home crowd. I've got them making the playoffs.
Yeah, I don't like our chances if we have to go in there and beat them in Week 17, to be honest with you. I think we can do it, but we're going to have to be healthy, and I'm hoping it doesn't come down to that last week. I'm hoping that we can win the division outright.
Jack, I'm happy with your prediction.
I respect it.
Yeah, so Jaguars winning the division, Texans as a wild card team, and maybe we'll see how the AFC West goes tomorrow or Thursday or whenever we record it. Maybe the Titans will find a way to sneak in there.
We'll see.
So you guys, let's recap here. Jordan, You've got the Titans winning the division?
Yep, and the Jags is a wild card.
And Connor, you've got?
Originally I had the Texans winning it and the Titans getting the wild card. I don't know. That's my gut. I still think the Texans are better than both of our teams. I think it just comes down to whether or not they can get through that schedule of theirs.
Yeah. So is that where you're sticking by that pick?
I think I am. Yes.
This is fun. I like disagreement, and this is a great division because really it's too bad that Luck isn't playing, because with the Colts, I truly think you could have picked any of these four teams.
Definitely. And yeah, looking at it, originally I had the Colts, like before the Andrew Luck news, I had the Colts winning the division, and then I had all three, the Titans, Jags, and Texans competing for the wild card spot. So going back to you saying that you were giving out two roses, I was always giving out two roses as well.
I wish I was giving out two roses in real life.
Yeah.
Maybe someday, Jack, you'll sneak on.
Whatever that means.
Yeah.
I don't know. Potential Bachelor 2022 or something. I don't know.
Let's move on.
Okay. Let's give out some roses to the NFC South.
I like it.
Okay. I know, Connor, you came very prepared. Which team would you like to lead us off with here in the South?
Well,
let's go Carolina. Let's go where you live. Let's go Charlotte area. The team playing there, Carolina Panthers. What are you looking at with this team?
Panthers are very interesting. They're kind of like the Titans, where it's going to come down to the QB health. I think Cam's health is super important to the success of this team. That's pretty obvious. But another thing, looking at this team, I actually think that the Panthers made like the best and most underrated move, especially in this division. They got rid of Matt Khalil and they brought in Matt Paradis from, I believe, Denver, and he's been really good, and he's looked good in the preseason as well. So that should help their line tremendously, which should take some of that pressure off of Cam and hopefully keep him healthy. Like I told you before, Matt Khalil was really. I mean, I don't like to dog on him, but he was not good for them last year, and so replacing him should be a really good move for them. I don't think they did a whole lot outside of that, but they addressed the biggest issue. And then looking at the offense, Greg Olsen is probably going to take a step back. I'm thinking he's getting older, and he's very injury prone. He can't stay healthy. But DJ Moore is a guy that I look out as a guy who can make a huge leap forward as a wide receiver one. I think he has a ton of talent. He's got great work ethic. He's got all the tools to become a really good receiver. I think it's just going to come down to him and Cam getting that chemistry down. I think that can help their pass game a ton. And then, obviously they've got Christian McCaffrey, who was really good last year in the pass game. So I like the Panthers this year. I think they have a better year than last year. I don't think they win the division by any means, but I think they have a good year this year.
I think a lot of people forget that this team was 6-2 before Cam injured his shoulder.
Before the Steelers ruined him on Thursday night.
And ruined their defense, and they dropped like 50 on him.
Yeah.
Yeah. This was a 6-2 team before Cam Newton got hurt a year ago. And you look at them on paper, and a lot of it is pretty similar to where they were at. When Cam's healthy, guys, he's a top 10 quarterback. And in his MVP year, he showed he can be one of the best in the league using not only his arm, but his legs too. Now, at this point in his career, Cam needs to start being really, really smart with where he takes his hits. Because, he's been injured. He's banged up pretty consistently. Heck, he played, 3 series in the preseason, and then he was done for the preseason with like a footage issue. But he should be good to go for week 1. So health of Cam Newton, yes, very, very crucial. There's not many, and I touched on this when we touched on Saquon, there's not many playmakers better in the league than Christian McCaffrey all around. The guy is the definition of a workhorse. In terms of fantasy, we've touched on that a lot. He's a top 2 to 3 pick. But a year ago, he ran for over 1,000 yards and had like 860 receiving. Man almost had a 2,000-yard season. And to be honest with you, heading into this year, I'm not sure 2,000 is really out of his realm. I think that's a potential possibility. I know they've touched on wanting to slow down his touches maybe a little bit. But, going from 35 to 32 is not a big deal in terms of a full season's workload. Another thing that Con didn't touch on that I think could be crucial, there's been a lot, and I mean a lot of talk about a couple potential breakout wide receivers from this camp. DJ Moore, he's a young guy. He kind of broke into the scene a little bit a year ago. And Curtis Samuel has been getting a ton of love. So those are 2 guys that could be really good options for Cam this year. I'm with you. Kind of think Greg Olsen is kind of on his downfall. Wouldn't be surprised if Ian Thomas started to make more plays in the pass game. Hopefully Greg can stay healthy. Hate seeing him hurt consistently. And I like them on the defensive side of the ball too. I think this is it's not a great football team, Jack, but I think it's a pretty good one.
Yeah, it's really interesting because you look at the NFC South from a year ago where it was really a different kind of year for that division because the Saints went 13-3 and then everyone else had a losing record. Falcons and Panthers in mediocrity around 7-9. But you mentioned this when we first got on this podcast. This is classically a very competitive division. 2 years ago, all 3 of these teams, Saints, Panthers, Falcons, all made the playoffs, and the Panthers were 11-5 just 2 years ago. Falcons 10-6. If I'm picking one of these 2 teams, potentially as a wild card, or at least if I've determined between Panthers or Falcons which one I like more, I like the Panthers a little more. I just do. And I'm really excited to watch Christian McCaffrey every week. That guy is so electric. He's just so fun to watch.
Yeah, and they're also a really well-coached team.
Yes.
It's a very important part that often gets underrated in the NFL. Very well-coached team. Ron Rivera is a very good coach.
Yeah, so if Cam is healthy, because that was, you guys both mentioned the drop-off in the second half of the season last year where he was not healthy, he was playing hurt, and eventually was no longer playing, I think that could make them look a little more like the 10-6 team that they were 2 years ago than the 7-9 team from a year ago. But ultimately, I think they're going to end up somewhere in between those two teams.
Yeah, and I think also, before we rotate here, Cam passing-wise was as good as he's been since his MVP year last year.
Yes.
In terms of yards, he was right there. If he didn't sit the last 2 games, he probably would have blown by his yard totals. And along with that, had his most touchdowns since 2015. So Cam, in terms of throwing the ball, I know he was hurt for a lot of that second half, but he looked better throwing the ball in terms of stat-wise.
According to the over-under on OddsShark, Carolina Panthers are at an even 8 wins. Man, that's a good number for them, it seems.
Jack, to be honest with you, I think all these Vegas numbers have been pretty good numbers. I guess there's a reason nobody wins. I like them at 8.
Yeah, that's actually funny. I put even at 8 there. So I guess looking at maybe the rest of the division, if I had to choose either way, I would probably go under, just because there's some question marks on the team. You know, they beefed up the O-line, but can it be that much better this year and keep Cam healthy? There's some of those offensive weapons are going to have to step up. If they don't, they're going to struggle. Defense is going to have to continue playing well. Luke Kuechly's not getting any younger. So, you know, there's some places where I could definitely see them going over, but if I had to pick, I would say under. But I have them at even at 8.
It's also important to note the Saints went 13-3 last year, and I don't think they're going 13-3 again this year. Now, we'll get to them in a little bit, but let's just take 2 wins off and they go to 11, then you can redistribute a couple of those wins to Carolina or Atlanta or whatever you want to do there. I think 8 is perfect for them. This would be my man. I would push on this one.
Yep, I agree.
Spot on.
Jordan, let's go to the next team. We mentioned them in our last little tangent or rant, if you will. Not really a rant, more of a tangent. Conversation. How about that? That's better. The Atlanta Falcons. What are you looking at with them this year, Jordan?
This was a team a year ago, I think heading into last year, that was a really popular, potential deep playoff run team. And it's a team that ended up being just absolutely obliterated by injuries a year ago. So heading into this year, it's a lot of it has to deal with the health of a lot of these guys. And at this point, the majority of them are back. Devonta Freeman's been a key piece for them for the past couple of years. He's also one who is pretty consistently banged up, and that's why having Tevin Coleman was also always such a key piece for them, because he always ended up getting some gains. But just a year ago, they lose Devonta Freeman. He's their probably best offensive playmaker apart from Julio Jones, and he only plays 2 games a year ago. So you take that off right off the get-go, and Tevin Coleman's a solid back, but he's a clear step down from Freeman. That was a big loss. Matt Ryan is a guy who, honestly, to me, guys, I don't know if you guys agree, but Matt Ryan's a quarterback. He's a guy who, year in and year out, has put up fantastic numbers. Occasionally can be turnover prone, but really throughout the last couple seasons, he's kind of fixed that issue. And last year, they go 7-9, and he throws for nearly 5,000 yards and throws 35 touchdowns to 7 picks. He had a great year for a team that ends up 7-9. And a lot of that has to deal with a lot of the issues they had on defense, whether it was injuries or that defense just really wasn't that good.
There was also a garbage time element as well.
That's fair.
Needs to be noted.
Playing from behind and running gunning, yeah. But you look at them this year, I think the outlook has to be kind of, I think all three of us had them pretty similar to the Panthers. And, it could potentially end up being a good year for the team. But, the outlook, I would bet their Vegas numbers right around 8 as well. I love Julio Jones, obviously one of the best playmakers in the league. Love the quote where he said he wants to get 3K yards this year. Don't think that's possible or going to happen, but I love the mentality. And also they have a really good young wide receiver, too, in Ken Ridley, who had a good season a year ago, too. Austin Hooper was a good tight end for them a year ago. I don't know too much about a lot of these guys defensively, but I expect it to be kind of an average defense, given that a lot of those injuries kind of broke them apart last year. Vic Beasley is a good player. He's an edge guy. But apart from that, I think the Falcons will be a solid team. I think right around 8 wins as well. But if Matty Ice has an MVP-type year again and all of a sudden Devonta Freeman plays 16 games, I think there is the potential that this team could be better than 8.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of the points that you made, Jordan. And a couple of things I just wanted to touch on. They beefed up their offensive line a little bit. They got some depth there with James Carpenter and Jamon Brown. They brought in a couple defensive guys that should make an impact in some of the pass rush game with Tyler Davison and Adrian Claiborne. So it to me, it seems that they looked and saw that they had a weakness on defense, and they addressed that, which is good for them. If they play better defense, they stay healthy, and Matt Ryan was another one I wanted to touch on because he had a great year last year. For a team that went 7-9, his stats were very, very good. So they stay healthy, they play a little bit better defense. I could definitely see them getting up to like 10 wins this year.
And to talk about the injury thing, they had 9 to 10 guys end up with the season on IR. So that's 9 to 10 potential starters. This was, again, a team that was just obliterated by injuries.
I always have the toughest time with this team. They're just so unpredictable and weird to me because we've seen some of those years. Obviously, that year where they had a lead in the Super Bowl, we won't go too far down that rabbit hole because we've heard it everywhere. And then they followed that season up, made the playoffs, and won 10 games, 10 or 11 games, actually. I can't remember. But I don't know. It's so weird because it seems like the second that I think they're great, they underwhelm me. And when I think they're bad, like last year where they were 7-9, and for a good chunk of the season, it seemed like they were playing around like 4-7 or whatever their record was at that point. It seems like I think they're bad again, which means that they're going to be great again, right? If that makes sort of sense. I'm not as high on them. I know you mentioned that Matt Ryan had a great year last year, but it's just like, I don't understand if you have a guy who plays that well and you still only win 7 games. Now, maybe some guys are healthy. I don't know about the defense. I'm not as high on them. I think they're an average team once again. But I do think there's somewhere they could end up anywhere between 6 wins and a division champ because they could do anything. I don't know. Let's talk about everyone's favorites, I would assume. The New Orleans Saints. 2 devastating playoff losses in a row. Are they going to take that next step this year, or are they set to maybe regress a little bit from their 13-3 miracle season? What do you think?
Oh man, I mean, you'd like to say that they're probably going to regress because 13 is such a high number to shoot after, but they brought in Jared Cook and Latavius Murray. That's going to be great, add great depth to important positions on their offense. They added some depth to their pass game with Malcolm Brown and Mario Edwards. So, and the Saints getting better and deeper from last year. That's not good for the division, and they were a Super Bowl contender last year, obviously. I think they're definitely one this year, too.
Yeah, I like the Saints a lot. And to be honest, I think on paper, when you look at all the depth charts in this division, the Saints are the clear number 1 roster from top to bottom. They have a really good defense, some really good playmakers, especially on the back end. Marshawn Lattimore is a stud young corner. Eli Apple's another young guy who I think he had some issues. Where was he with the Giants? But I like him as a lot more as a number 2 corner behind a guy like Lattimore than a 1. And of course, they have big Cam Jordan on the front end. I think this team is the best team in this division, but Con, like you said, they're not winning 13 games again. I don't think. Really, they feasted last year on a bad division. With Cam hurt and the Falcons with all those injuries and Tampa being Tampa. I just think they lose a couple of those wins, whether it's the Falcons or the Panthers beating them. I think they win the division, but I think they're more around 11-ish wins, maybe a little bit of regression. Breeze is getting up there in age too. He had a phenomenal season a year ago, but I think he wasn't nearly as good towards the end of the year, so maybe he was wearing down a little bit. That could be something to watch out for too as Breeze gets up there in age. But I do think that this team is still the premier team here, Jack.
I would agree. I don't have too many other thoughts. I do think that this team is easily the favorite here, and they're once again going to be very competitive, and Breeze is going to do they're going to have some routes like they did last year where they just kill a team on primetime like they did to the Eagles. I think that offense is still excellent, but I don't know. Jordan, I know you were making a long drive recently, and so you were listening to a lot of our old episodes, and you listened to our playoff preview. As much as I like them as a regular season team, and we're going to talk playoffs more in the next episode, I just don't know how much I like them as maybe they win a couple of playoff games. They're not the team that I think I would go with as the NFC champ. For a lot of the reasons I listed in the last edition that we made predictions on them.
Well, I think a lot of that has to do with whether they're playing at home, right, Jack?
Yes. Yeah, and so if they regress from 13 wins, they're not going to have that home field. I would not think that 11 wins gets you home field throughout the playoffs.
Yeah. So they potentially have to go on there. I know Breeze's numbers are not nearly as good outside of the dome.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to touch on that point you made about the division being a little better, Jordan, the Saints have to go into Tennessee and Jacksonville this year. So,
we know they're not winning those games.
Yeah, so that's 2 losses right there. So, we're going to have to – I think we're definitely all going to have to hit the under on that 13.
Does this team have the best 1-2 punch in terms of weapons with Kamara and Thomas? It's got to be up there.
And Austin Carr at receiver as well.
On Carr?
The great Northwestern product.
Oh, my God. Never mind. It's not the Bachelor you have to slide in. It's a Northwestern.
Yes.
You have to slide in. There it is.
Northwestern always. Against the Stanford Cardinal this Saturday. An exciting game out on the West Coast. I'm looking forward to watching that one.
Yeah, Jack. I'll make sure to toss that on the TV.
I went last time they played each other. Stanford at Northwestern. Northwestern won. I was there. I believe it was Clayton Thorson's first career start as a freshman. That was a fun one. I think Stanford was like 12 coming in the season. They were ranked 12.
That's actually pretty sick.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a lot of fun.
So going back to that point, is there a better 1-2 punch than Kamara and Thomas? You could have made the case a year ago with Le'Veon and Antonio Brown. But guys, I think this is the best 1-2 punch in the game in terms of playmakers.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So you're not factoring in quarterback in this instance.
No, but it surely helps.
Yeah.
Much like it may have. We'll find out if it helped Le'Veon and Antonio this year.
I'm trying to think. What are some of the other ones?
Amari Cooper and Zeke could be one that's probably up there.
Yeah.
Let's see. Devonta and Julio probably if Devonta's
Yeah, that's a really good one.
Chubb and OBJ.
Chubb and OBJ will be like the next one probably. And a year ago you could have made the case for Kareem Hunt and Tyreek Hill, but not anymore.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was the one last year probably.
Yeah, but not anymore. So
because, Le'Veon did not play last year.
No.
So the Steelers one was more from like 2-3 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. So there you go. Right now I think it's got to be Kamara and Thomas.
Yeah, I would agree. Win total this year, Vegas has them at 10. They seem like an easy one to... I think we would go over.
10. That's interesting. That seems wow.
Yeah.
I'm surprised. I would have thought they would have at least given maybe 10.5 or 11. I'm gonna go over here, but that makes me wonder what they're seeing.
The only team that has at least 11 is New England.
Yeah.
Everyone else has 10 or 10.5.
I guess with one injury, you can do so much for an NFL team. Maybe they, and I guess it's obviously really hard to repeat the way they did in terms of 13-3.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take the over there.
I am curious if their road schedule is tougher this year than it was last year. Because
I'm actually not sure what their strength of schedule looks like. I haven't looked into their schedule too much, but I think they definitely benefited from some of that beat up division last year. So,
going to Jacksonville and Tennessee, neither of those are going to be easy games except wins.
Not easy wins at all.
It looks like they play the AFC East as one of their divisions they play. So they're at Jets, and they got to play the Pats at some point, right? Or maybe not.
They probably play the Patriots at home, though.
I see Jets and Dolphins. They only play 2. Maybe they only play 2.
Oh.
They've got at Rams, at Seahawks.
At Bears. That's not an easy one.
Yeah, at Bears. So,
there's some tough games.
A lot of teams they played last year, it seemed like they had home. I'm pretty sure they would have played the Rams at home last year. I mean, if they're playing out in LA this year, that means that they would have hosted the Rams last year, yes?
I would imagine so. They did host the Rams. They also hosted the Eagles.
Did they host the Vikings as well?
They hosted the Steelers, too. No, they went to Minnesota, but beat them 30-20.
Yeah. So a lot of their tougher games were at home last year.
Yeah, and you also get the hangover factor too of a team that went 13-3 and their season ended the way it did. How will they bounce back, especially early in this year? Something to look out for.
Yeah, I would go over primarily because there isn't a team in this division that this is tough, because if you were to put maybe one of those AFC South teams in here, I think things could get really interesting, but I'm just not overly enthusiastic about anyone else in this division. So while I do think they regress from their win total of 13 last year, they'll get to 11, I still would go over.
Yeah, I would too. I would go over on that. I think 11's a really good number for them.
I agree.
All right. Who wants to talk about the Tampa Bucks?
Nobody. Some positive things. They added 2 linebackers. That should help the defense a little bit. Other than that, they didn't really do much. And for a team that's not good, you would think they would. Jameis, I don't think Jameis is bad. I think he's a solid QB option. I'm not sure really it's his fault that the line can't block for him. He has Mike Evans, who's a good receiver, and I think that's why he actually still throws for a good amount of yardage, throws some touchdowns, but he throws some interceptions. I don't have much to say about them, but I don't really see them being any better than they were last year.
So they do have a new head coach this year, by the way. They fired Dirk Koetter after 2 years, so it seems like they just keep bringing in coaches every 2
Hey, try and fix this mess. Oh, you didn't do it quick. You didn't do it quickly. See you later.
Yeah, I don't understand the Lovie Smith one, why he got axed so quickly. I thought he did a pretty good job with them.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I am not sure.
So their new head coach, they brought in Bruce Arians.
Oh yeah, they did. Wow.
Yeah, that's a big get.
That is a good get. I actually think Jameis, in terms of the core, and I relate to this. I always go back to this, but in quarterback rankings, I think he's often pretty disrespected. I don't think he's anywhere near a top 15, but a lot of lists will always have him as a bottom 5 starting QB in the league. I don't think he's that bad. He's shown signs. He's also always had more TDs than picks, and he's had some decent seasons in terms of yards as well. 2 4K seasons, and he missed games in the past 2 years. Heck, didn't they bench him last year?
Was he suspended at the beginning
maybe he was
of the year?
suspended. Okay, because it was the Fitz magic.
Right, yep, that's right.
Yeah, and then eventually Fitz lost the spot.
Which was bound to happen. But
Yeah.
I think that Jameis can be a little disrespected. I don't think he's a great quarterback, but I think he's just a decent one. Apart from him, really on the offensive side of the ball, the only things to touch on, Mike Evans is a great receiver, probably a top 7-ish guy. He often makes, him and Jameis has been a really good connection throughout the past couple seasons. And O.J. Howard is a guy that a lot of people consistently talk of, at least in terms of fantasy, maybe as a breakout tight end. So he's one to watch out for. He's a playmaking tight end. This team was, 5-11 a year ago?
Mm-hmm.
The Saints are a couple games worse. Both the Falcons and Panthers are around 8-8. I wouldn't be surprised if this team won 6 to 7 games. I really wouldn't.
Well, they have them at 6.5 actually.
Okay, well,
so.
there you go.
they're in your head.
Yeah, Vegas wouldn't be either. I don't think it's a bad football team. I think Arians is a good coach, too. That was a good get, Jack. Thank you for that info.
I like Arians a lot. I think I'm not high on them this year. I've been burned by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers several times in the past. And maybe they need to just get back to the good old John Gruden days.
It is.
One of these years. But, no, Bruce Arians is a great coach. The Arizona Cardinals were really exciting for 2-3 years there, where they were a legit NFC contender. Jordan, I'm pretty sure 2 years ago, you and I were singing praises of the Tampa Bay Bucks. We were, at least I was. I think we both were high on them as a worst to first team that was on the rise. Jameis's third year. Am I remembering this correctly? We liked them quite a bit a couple years ago.
Yeah, I think I definitely had I was decently high on. I don't think I had them winning the division or anything like you may have. I'd have to go back and listen to that podcast.
Well, it doesn't exist anymore because it was pre-Jack Vita show day.
Oh, okay.
So you're
I'm in the clear.
Yeah.
Jack,
well,
I did not. Jack, are you kidding? I did not have them go. I was not big on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers back then.
You were talking up. You're like Deshaun Jackson and.
Oh yeah, they surrounded Winston with some weapons, and he had a pretty solid year.
It made sense.
Yeah, it did. Maybe.
It made some sense because it was before. Look, the Saints were rebuilding at the time. I think they were coming off a rough year, and these other two teams are always a mystery. And this is a division that's had a lot of teams shuffling around throughout this millennium.
Yeah.
So it wasn't far-fetched. And I think they started out the season pretty well, too. I remember watching a local game where they were just blowing out the Bears. I think it was week 2, and they looked excellent. They looked really good. So it made some sense.
Do you have that in front of you? Do you have their schedules from 2017 in front of you?
No.
How the heck do you remember? Because I'm looking at their set right now, and they did indeed blow out the Bears in week 2.
He's Sean McVay.
I remember that day because I was very sick with my thyroid ailment, and my parents were out of town. It was a fun weekend, which really means nothing. But one of my buddies is a big Bears fan, came over, watched that game. He brought over buffalo wings, and he was just getting so progressively madder and madder as that game went on.
I think for fair reason. That Bucs team ended up winning 5 games.
And then I believe last year the Bears blew out the Bucs again. Like, it wasn't the same weekend, but my parents were out of town and they were texting me because they're Bears fans. They were very excited. I think they were blowing out the Bucs. It was their turn last
48
year.
to 10 week 4.
And our good friend Tommy Mantisse was pretty excited about that game as well. He was texting me.
Tommy being excited about the Bears is quite shocking. It seems like he's always down on them.
He was excited to maybe tweet about them, I think, was the thing.
Fair enough.
This is such a weird organization that they've just fallen off so much, and they've not made the playoffs since 2007, which was Gruden. Post Gruden, this team has had how many different coaches? Let me think. Raheem Morris. They had Lovey. They had someone before Lovey. Arians, Cutter. They've had a lot of coaches over 12 years. That's like 6 coaches.
Good to see they have good job security. I'd love to take that job. Turn around Jameis in 2 seasons, or we'll see you later.
Well, hopefully they've
Schiano's that one you missed.
Yes.
Schiano's.
Yes.
They've had 5 coaches, including Arians, since Gruden.
Yeah.
Okay.
Over 12 years. And Schiano, I remember with him was the big thing with him was that one game where the Giants were lining up for a kneel down. I think it was like week 2 or week 3. And they just brought the house in on Eli Manning, and everyone got upset about it, and that was like the big talking point for the week.
I don't remember that.
I don't remember that either.
What year was that? 2002? What, junior in high school?
2012.
Junior in high school?
2012?
Yeah, right?
I was finished with high school then.
Oh, wait, you're older than us. I always forget that.
Yeah.
So you probably had graduated, right?
Yeah.
That was like, okay. Gotcha. That was the fall after you had graduated.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. I'm glad
I was a junior in high school.
we're diving deep on all my memories of the Tampa Bay Bucks post high school.
I mean, I wouldn't question it if it was like a good organization, but like
or a local organization.
Yeah, somebody
like the Bears.
This team hasn't been good. I guess the Gruden attachment may be the reason.
Yeah,
no,
100%.
I just remember stuff. It's weird. Okay,
that's why you're good at Sports Jeopardy. Go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, so I think they finally have the right coach if they give him enough time. This team should turn it around over the next 3-4 years with this coach, but it's not happening this year.
Do you think Jameis is the answer there?
I don't know. That's a tough one. I mean, I've been higher on Jameis than a lot of people have. I'm not as high on him now. I mean, I think last year was really telling. That was kind of the year where I thought they would have moved on. If they move on from head coaches this quickly, I thought they would have moved on to the next quarterback. But I am with you. I don't think he's a bad quarterback. I think you can win games with Jameis. I just think they need to patch up a bunch of other things, find a coach that they like, and find the right personnel, because this organization is it's just been a mess for a long time. I think Jameis is solid.
And it's important to know this, like with Mariota, this could I think this is the offseason.
Yeah.
This upcoming offseason will be when they make the decision there.
Yeah. So I guess it makes sense. This is year 5 for both those guys. So it makes sense, I suppose, to be the make or break year. And I ultimately, knowing this organization, I don't think they're going to be. Now watch, they're gonna end up winning 10 games and proving me wrong. I don't think this team's gonna be a playoff team, and I think they're gonna bring in Arians' as guy. He's gonna get to pick his guy, whoever that is. So maybe they want Tua. Maybe that'll be Tua's landing spot. I don't know.
Maybe Jameis wants to be a Colt.
Ooh.
I think that 6.5 for the wins is actually probably a good number for Jameis too. I think if he wins 7 games, they keep going with him. But if they only win 5 or 6, I think they'll probably move on.
And I think the numbers on these guys, the numbers on Jameis and Mariota are going to be so interesting, because the quarterbacks, it seems like whoever it is, if you're getting paid, you're getting near the highest money. So it'll be really interesting for 2 guys like them, who I think the majority of people would consider them, right around bottom of 10-ish QBs in the league, at least until this year. Depending on how they go this year, it could be different. But those numbers are going to look really interesting, because we know how much it can hurt if you pay the wrong guy.
Yeah, for sure.
So over under 6.5.
I'm going to go under. I'm going to go 6-10.
Yeah, I'm going to go 5-11 again.
Yeah, I think they're between 5 and 6 wins. I would go under. Maybe we're missing something here. I mean, Vegas likes them. We'll see.
I think Vegas is sending out a prayer. I don't think they have any idea what to expect with this team. I just think they think the Saints will be worse, and the other 2 teams will be right around 500. I think that's what they're seeing.
Yeah, probably.
It's got to be.
Do you guys have any other Tampa Bay Bucks trivia for me?
No. I couldn't even think I could come up with a question for you.
I definitely could not. I guess it will help them that they're playing a schedule again.
Yeah,
maybe that's why they're the 6.5.
Yeah,
could help.
Could
No
be.
doubt about it.
As we look at these divisions, we'll look at this NFC South. I I want to make sure we may have glossed over this. Let me just make sure I got you guys. Atlanta's over-under total is 8.5. I would go under. Where are you guys on Atlanta?
I'm over.
Yeah, they would have them at 9.
Yep, that's right where I have them.
So, outside of the Saints, any playoff teams in this division?
I think they could sneak one in. I think the Falcons could make the playoffs.
Yeah, I think the Falcons will be right there. I don't know if I have them in, no.
Yeah, I'd have to look at like a whole scope of the NFC to give you an official answer on that. But I think the Falcons could be a wild card team for sure. I think they're good enough.
I think a lot of it.
I think
a lot of it made up Zeke, because I think
True.
the NFC East is where that other wild card team could come. I think the North will have a wild card team. If Zeke is there, I think it will probably be the Eagles or Cowboys, whoever doesn't win that division.
Maybe Seahawks.
Yeah.
It could be them too. They always quietly. I mean, last year they won 10 games. So yeah, potentially Niners and Cardinals should both be better though.
Yeah,
True.
the Niners are a wild card because, and this is all a good tease for the next episode, if Garoppolo, with him healthy, what could they be? Because they looked pretty decent those first 2 weeks.
And it's a matter of how comfortable he is too. I know he has not looked one bit good in the preseason. So it's going to be a little bit for him too, yeah. Getting back into the flow, it'll be interesting.
So you see what you got in him. There's some good weapons on offensively and defensively for that squad. And then the Seahawks, it's like Pete Carroll just keeps bringing in these new guys, drafting these new guys on the defense, and they keep reloading and being good. I was ready to write them off last year, so it'll be interesting to see where we project them next episode.
Looking forward to it.
Definitely. I'm looking forward to listening to it.
Connor, before we get you out of here, do you want to leave a Super Bowl pick?
Oof.
Well, my Super Bowl pick originally was going to be the Colts because I thought they were going to be really good and maintain that momentum they had going. Right now, it's the Chiefs.
NFC team?
Oh, I have to pick both. I'd probably go. I think I would go with the Saints.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Well, Jordan and I will get to our picks in next episode. Connor, is there anything else you want to talk about while you're here? Anything you'd like to promote, business-wise, social media?
No, I'm good. I just appreciate you guys having me on here. It's a lot of fun. I've been looking forward to this ever since you mentioned it. So thank you to both of you. It was a lot of fun.
Jack, another superstar guest for us. Our guests
Yes.
have killed it on these episodes.
Yeah, Connor, thank you so much. You did a great job. This was a lot of fun. And, hey, maybe your Masters time will get you back.
Oh, I've been waiting to do a golf podcast. You've been slacking on me.
Hey, you've been slacking. I've asked you a couple times. It just has the schedules haven't lined up.
Yeah, that's probably true.
It just hasn't worked out. It's mutual.
Yep.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Connor. This was a lot of fun, man.
Thanks, guys.
That's it from Conner Ennis. I thought he did a great job, Jordan.
Yeah, Jack, like I said, our guests have really impressed me. I think they're making us look bad. We need to lower the quality a little bit.
Are you ready for our next guest?
I am. Yeah, I've done, one podcast, I think, with Evan in the past?
Yes, Evan Myers, the OG from this podcast. I think he recorded like the first 5 episodes with me. Because it was back in March Madness 2018, and Evan is just so excellent when it comes to college basketball, which I'm sure he and I will crank something out once college basketball starts up, which can't believe, oh my gosh. We're talking about college basketball starting up.
Yeah, already almost here.
Summer went by way too fast, in my opinion. But Evan does a great job. He's a really bright guy. And prepare yourselves. He may have some hot takes. I will not be surprised if there's some hot takes. We'll call him out, though.
I'm all in. All about the hot take. Bring him on, Ev. Let's go.
So we will talk AFC West and NFC West. And unfortunately, Evan does not have a rooting interest in either division. So we don't have the fan perspective in this one. But what we can assure you is there's going to be a lot of objectivity from all three of us, which will be cool.
And that's what we always go for here on the Jack Vita podcast.
Yes. Yeah, we'll talk with Evan. It'll be a lot of fun in addition to forecasting those divisions. We're going to give our playoff picks. We'll probably give our Super Bowl picks. I mean, we'll definitely give our Super Bowl picks. Probably give maybe like AFC, NFC championship game, just an estimation. I'm going to have to work on this, Jordan. I don't know where I'm going yet.
Jack, I'm just thankful that we've had the 4 episodes to do it, because every time you ask the guests who their Super Bowl picks are, I'm like, oh, thank God he's not asking me. I haven't even thought that far ahead.
Well, this will be a lot of fun. So we'll be recording this. Today, by the way, is August 26th. So it'll be either the 27th or 29th. The episode will be recorded. It'll come out at a later date, but it'll come out before week 1. So lots of great content here. I can't believe we're almost done with this thing, Jordan.
I know, it's flying by, but to be honest with you, I'm happy because I am so ready for the football season to begin, Jack.
Yeah, and September baseball, baby. We got a great pennant race here in both the American League and National League, and I'm excited to get back to talking some baseball and recapping NFL games each week, and some of these reality shows starting up this fall, Survivor and stuff like that. It's gonna be fun. You know, all the fall TV shows return. It's good.
Looking forward to tuning into your content for those.
Yeah,
I gotta start watching some of those shows so I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, that would be. You know, Brandon Vickery, our good friend, he's gonna talk Survivor with me. In addition to some sports when that Survivor premiere lands in a few weeks. It would be great if you watched the Survivor premiere and you just try to figure out what's going on with us.
Figure out what the heck you guys were talking about. I hope you guys are talking Cubs. That'll be some fun talk.
Oh, boy. We'll see what kind of Cubs content is being produced
Fair
a
enough.
month from now.
Fair enough.
Well, Jordan, this was a lot of fun. Why don't you tell the listeners where they can listen to this podcast?
iTunes, or what's the other one, Jack? I always forget the other one. I always listen on iTunes.
Yes, iTunes. Subscribe on there. Leave a review. Funny story about the iTunes reviews. I got a good one here. I saw my uncle yesterday. He's a big Steelers fan. I told him to listen to our AFC North preview, and he was like, he had gotten about 15, 20 minutes in while he was cleaning up his dog's vomit. And I said, this needs to be the review left on iTunes. This is my favorite podcast to listen to when I clean up dog vomit.
Oh, my God. I love it. Makes it creative. People are going to read that and be like, huh?
And I was like, oh, my gosh. So now every time that you think of vomit, you're going to think of this podcast. And he said, no. Like, it made the experience somewhat bearable because the podcast was so good. I'm like, oh, thanks. I appreciate that.
There it is. That's one way to think about it.
But, yeah, subscribe to the Jack Vita Show on iTunes or Podbean, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube. Wherever you get your podcast, you should subscribe, follow along, and you will never miss an episode. It helps the podcast a lot. Leave a 5-star rating and review on iTunes. In fact, if you want, you could leave us a question in your iTunes review. Leave a question of something that you'd like me to talk about in a future episode. Tell your friends about the podcast. I don't think I missed anything, Jordan. I think that's it.
I think we're good to go. On to episode 4.
On to episode 4. Well, any parting words here, Jordan?
Jack, just once again, love your AFC South pick.
We'll see how much I love it in November, December.
Fair enough. I hope you were on your game when you made that one.
Oh, man. My NFL picks are just, they're not quite as reliable as the St. Louis Cardinal NL Central pick or the NL Atlanta Braves pick.
You shout out
those
the
baseball
2 out of
picks.
6 you've gotten right this season. No, just kidding.
Oh, man. All right, it's time to end this one. Thank you so much to everyone who listened to the Jack Vita Show today. Subscribe, listen along, and have a great week. We'll talk to you soon. Bring in the Dancing Lobsters.